Hello and welcome to another video. In this one we're going to talk about the wedding of Reggie Kray and Frances Shea in April 1965. The wedding would take place at St James the Great Church in Bethnal Green Road. This is the church here. It is now flats and it was redeveloped into flats in 1981. The wedding was dubbed the East End Wedding of the Year. Reggie Kray was 31 when he married Frances Shea, and Frances was 21 years old. The twins had just won a famous trial a couple of weeks before the wedding. They were on trial for demanding money with menaces over a club in Westminster called The Hideaway. I have just done a recent video on this trial, so I won't detail that here. Once released from prison after his stint on remand, Reggie wanted to set the wheels in motion straight away to marry his longtime girlfriend, Frances Shea. During an interview on a news programme on the evening of the acquittal from their trial, Reggie said that he wants to get married as soon as possible.
What are you going to do now that it's all over?
I like to have a bit of family life now, I intend to get married in the near future. I did before this case, but it's put back over the case, and let's get married as soon as possible,
Reggie and Frances had been courting for quite some time. They met in the late 1950s, around 1958 or 1959, when Reggie had just set up the twins' first proper club called the Double R Club. The relationship had been rocky to say the least. Frances had mental health issues, and Reggie needed to be at the beck and call of his twin brother Ronnie, made things quite difficult for their relationship. Plus there was the fact that Frances was very disliked by Ronnie and he would berate her openly in front of people. I did say in a previous video about Frances that she was maybe a shy type, but I have since found out that this isn't the case. She was known to be quite feisty and could hold her own, but I'm not sure if this would have applied to when Ron had a go at her. There is nothing documented of Frances giving anything back to Ron on these occasions, but it is well documented that Ronnie did dislike her and berated her openly. Reggie's reactions to these outbursts from Ronnie are not really documented, apart from a small bit in Kray firm associate Mickey Fawcett's book Crazy Days, where he says that he was caught in the middle of Ronnie saying things about Frances in front of Reg one evening in a club. Ron said to Mickey Fawcett, "What do you think of his bird, Mick? Ain't she got horrible legs?" Mickey Fawcett said that he stayed quiet at this point and then removed himself from the twins' company before punches started flying. So there is some evidence that Reggie and Ronnie did come to blows over Frances, but the fact is that Reggie would have loved Ronnie just as much as he loved Frances. According to family friend Johnny Squibb, it seems the rest of the family didn't treat Frances very well also.
And invariably their rows was only over the family and the way that they treated Frances, and she had good reason to. They didn't treat her nice at all.
Frances was a bit of a threat to the twins' relationship and their business. Ron would have known that it could have been easy for Reg to drift away from him and become less involved in things. There was also the chance of Reg having kids with Frances, although she was still very young at the time. The wedding in April 1965 must have been very worrying for Ronnie. Although he looked quite happy in some of the photographs, it would have not been a happy day for him. At that moment, the thought of losing Reg must have been hitting home. Reggie asked the very loyal Father Hetherington to marry them, but Father Hetherington refused. He was loyal to the twins in the past, often turning up at courts where the twins were being tried, and he gave them character witness statements. But the marrying of Reg and Frances he just could not do. Author John Pearson spoke to Father Hetherington years later to find out why he would not marry them, and Father Hetherington told John Pearson, "I had known Reg since he was a boy, but when they came and asked me to marry them, I said I couldn't. I told them that I hoped they would not go through with it. When Father Hetherington was asked by John Pearson the reason why he could not marry them, he replied, "Because they simply had no idea of what marriage was about. Not merely was there not the faintest hope of them finding any happiness together, but I could see them causing serious harm to one another." It's a strange case really that even the local vicar got to hear about the very rocky relationship, but I suppose in them days, with the tight communities, words travel fast. Despite Father Hetherington's objections, Reg was determined to marry Frances Shea, and he got another vicar to do the honours. It was a one Father John Foster, who was a younger vicar. He had recently gave evidence for the twins at their demanding money with menaces trial involving the Hideaway Club in Soho in Westminster. Frances's parents heavily disapproved of Reg's relationship and marriage to their daughter Frances. It was no secret that they disliked Reg and his involvement in organised crime, being a gangster. Reg was at times barred from the Shea household. Frances's brother Frankie Shea worked for the twins as a driver, so maybe they blamed Reggie for this, for getting Frankie involved in their way of life. Frances's father also was arrested at one of the twins' spielers, the Weather and Way Club, when it was raided by police in the early 1960s. Frances's father had took up the offer of a job at the club. I'm not sure whether he knew if the club was crooked or if he thought it was legit. If he thought it was legit and was told it was legit and he got arrested, this would have added to the list against Reg also. But just like Father Hetherington, the Shays were not going to stop Reggie marrying Frances. On the morning of the wedding, friend of the family and hairdresser Maureen Flanagan tended to Violet Krays' hair while Reggie paced anxiously around the kitchen. This is according to Maureen Flanagan in her book One of the Family, 40 Years with the Krays. She also said in the book that Ronnie that morning was saying, "What does he want to get married for?" And Ronnie was just generally showing disapproval to the whole thing. Over 100 telegrams arrived at Valence Road, good wishes from Judy Garland, Lita Rosa, Joan Littlewood and Lord Boothby. Guests began to mingle outside of the church, and David Bailey pulled up in a blue Rolls Royce wearing a blue velvet suit for his role as official photographer for the day. David Bailey would also take some famous pictures of the twins and brother Charlie that year in 1965. The iconic image of the twins embedded in people's minds of the Kray twins in their prime. He would also later take pictures of the twins shortly before their arrest in 1968 at their mother's flat in Bun Hill Row in Shoreditch and at the Old Horns public house in Bethnal Green. It shows that even in the later years of the twins' reign, they could still court somebody as famous as David Bailey to come and take photos of them. The Kray family were driven in special cars from nearby Valence Road, but Reggie decided to walk to the church. This is possibly to steady his nerves. This is the distance from Valence Road to the church. As you can see, it's only a very short walk to Bethnal Green Road, where the church was situated. Frances's mother, Elsie Shea, decided to wear black to the wedding. The attire was suited more to a funeral, and it was a blatant show of her disapproval of the wedding. As the wedding got underway and the hymns were sung during the wait for Frances' arrival, Ronnie Kray, although not best pleased about the wedding, still wanted to do the duties of being his twin brother's best man the best he could, and to make the wedding a success. Ronnie felt the hymns were not being sung with the gusto or volume that he expected.
It was just a colleague of mine, and I went to the wedding of Reggie Kray and Frances Shea. Reggie entered with his bride, and a hymn was struck up by the organist, which the congregation didn't know. I could see Ronnie Kray, who was best man, becoming very fidgety in his pew and he kept turning round with an irascible look in his face. The organist played on, and Ronnie finally got up and strode down the aisle, and he said in the loudest stage whisper, "Sing, you, sing."
The wedding seems to have gone okay though, apart from Ronnie having to stride up and down the aisle, trying to get the congregation to sing to his desired level of volume. And outside the church, as the confetti was thrown, it was all smiles. It was a happy day for Reg and Francis, there's no doubt about that. There was a glimmer of hope for them for the future. I'm not sure what members of the firm were there that day, but Albert Donahue was not there. He was serving a prison sentence in Brixton, but he said later about the wedding in his book The Enforcer, after he saw the wedding photos when he was released from prison. Where most people's wedding photos are filled with mum, dad, Auntie Mary and other young couples, these were dominated by big flat noses wearing buttonholes. The reception was packed with scar-faced thugs. Francis could not have missed them. It was obviously a happy occasion for some, but Francis was getting the drift of what was going on even then. She tried to look happy. She managed to smile, but what's a smile? You can sit in a dentist chair and open your mouth and it looks like you're smiling, but you're in agony. Kray firm associate Mickey Fawcett was not there. He decided to not attend. He probably knew it would be a bit of a circus and didn't want to get involved. I think he told Reggie that he was ill and couldn't make it. The reception was held at the Glenray Hotel. The Glenray was a place that the twins had muscled into not too long before the wedding. They slowly took over the place and planted their feet in there, using it as a kind of headquarters for the firm at the time. They were not getting protection money out of the Glenray, but they were nipping, as in having goods for free, drinks, food, free beds. The place was owned by a woman called Phoebe Woods. I'm not sure if she was paid for laying on any food etc. for the reception, but she probably wasn't. As usual with the twins, it was probably a case of we will sort it out later, in which later never really arrived. After the wedding, Francis and Reg went to Athens in Greece for their honeymoon, but it was not a happy honeymoon for them by all accounts. There is pictures of them on the honeymoon. According to twins associate Mickey Fawcett in his book Crazy Days, he was with Reg and Francis shortly after the honeymoon in a club one night, and Francis said to Mickey in front of Reg, "Do you know he hasn't laid a finger on me all the time we've been away?" All Reg could muster to this was, "Caw, I'm glad it's you," she told, "and nobody else." That pretty much wrapped up the wedding for Reg and Francis. Things would only go downhill from here on in their relationship. Francis with her mental health issues and Reg with his lifestyle, and of course Ron being there at every turn was a recipe for disaster. At this point it was a bit of a tug of war between Ron and Francis, with Reg in the middle. Reg would later always blame the Shea family for things going sour with Francis, and while this wouldn't have helped the relationship with Reg and Francis, and it would put more strain on things, I think the struggle between Ron and Francis for Reg was the real big issue here. This would have been happening for years though, as Reg and Francis were together for about 6 or 7 years before getting married. Maybe Francis thought the marriage would change things and would change Reg. As we know, it didn't change things and it didn't change Reg. In June 1967, Francis Shea committed suicide at the age of 23. The relationship had been on and off with Reg since the wedding in 1965. In the days before her death, Francis and Reg had booked a holiday to Ibiza. It was an attempt to rekindle things, but it was never meant to be. I spoke in a video before about Francis and whether things would have been different for her if she hadn't have met Reg. It's something we could never know, the answer too fully. The pressures of Reggie's lifestyle would not have helped, and then you have to factor in the dominance of Ronnie over Reg. Frances was very troubled, and all this would have impacted her greatly, but we have to remember she did attempt suicide before she met Reggie. Frances did try to break away from Reg in the letters that she wrote to him. She seemed adamant that the relationship had to end, but Reggie, he just couldn't let go. Unfortunately, the words of Father Hetherington in the weeks before the wedding rang true. They did harm themselves. Reggie Kray went on to stab to death Kray firm member Jack McVitie in October 1967, and I believe this would not have happened if Frances was still alive. Dominated by his twin brother Ron, Reg had given up caring what happened to him. That's about it for this video. This was a look at the wedding of Frances Shea and Reggie Kray. There isn't too much to say on it really, so it's not a really long video, but it was worth having a little look at it. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Like always, you're welcome to give your opinion on things. So that's about it. I would like to thank you all for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Thank you.
They wasn't left alone to be husband and wife. He couldn't stay another night like an ordinary person could. It'd be a phone call and he'd have to go to this pub or that club, and you know, or Ronnie would want him, and it was like really having a if you're married into a big family, having a family interfering in your marriage, and that's what it was like with him and Ron, you know.